People often ask me what brushes I use to create my digital art, so today I'll be demonstrating my personal favorite set of brushes. Before I show you the brushes and what they can do, let me give you some background about what inspired me to create these. These brushes are based on an obscure art movement called Unimpressivism. What is Unimpressivism, you ask? The Unimpressivist movement was founded in 1897 by a group of artists who rejected the impressiveness of mainstream art because of how it aims to reproduce the details of a subject. Even the Impressionists, their contemporaries at the time, disgusted the Unimpressivists because of how they shunned classical realism but still captured the essence of a scene. Instead, the Unimpressivists strive to produce paintings that are as unimpressive as possible. They often use sloppy brushstrokes to make their subject unrecognizable, and their paintings utilize a severely limited palette with muddy colors that lack contrast. It can be difficult to distinguish one object or feature from another. This painting called Landscape of Nothingness by Michel Tran is an excellent example. Contrary to how mainstream art focuses on the beauty of the natural world, Unimpressivists prefer to depict the ugliness and mundanity of everyday life. The group's manifesto, which was written by the artist J. Roscoe Cooley, declared that Unimpressivists would reject the tyranny of light and color and make art like we ate paint chips. This became the mantra of many Unimpressivists, such as Spanish painter Julian Navarro, who painted exclusively with lead-based paint. The Unimpressivist movement had limited success, and by the end of the 19th century, there were few Unimpressivist artists working in the major European cities. The movement's initial popularity was due in part to its inclusiveness, which flew in the face of the establishment art scene. But Unimpressivism's fate was ultimately that no one was impressed by how unimpressive the artists were. By 1978, much of the world had begun banning lead-based paint, and for several decades it seemed as if Unimpressivism had reached an end. But the Unimpressivist movement lives on. Its popularity has exploded in recent years, primarily due to the success of NFTs, a space which has grown to disproportionately value unimpressive art. Most notably, Waldo T-Bone Foster set a record for the most unimpressive NFT ever auctioned. It sold for $739.5 million at a mall kiosk in Beaverton Springs, Colorado. It was purchased by T-Bone Forrester, an entrepreneur and syrup tycoon who is not related to Waldo T-Bone Foster. Enough with the art history lesson. How does the Unimpressivist brush pack work, and how can it enhance your ability to make art no one wants? There are 3 primary obstacles to becoming an Unimpressivist. First, you must be able to make art that is far less than mediocre. It must be outright terrible. Even a preschool teacher would give it an F. Second, an Unimpressivist must lack all inspiration or motivation to make art. Otherwise, they might put in too much effort and accidentally gain experience. That leads to art that doesn't look half bad, which is a surefire way for work to end up in a gallery or win an award, so steer clear of marijuana. The brushes in this pack are so uninspiring that you won't even know what to do with them. And third, novice Unimpressivists often find it challenging to avoid being too prolific. Fortunately, this pack makes it damn near impossible to accomplish anything. You'll struggle for days trying to make a coherent mark on your canvas, and when you do, it almost certainly won't be worth keeping. With these brushes, you are guaranteed not to impress anyone, and you'll be ready to become an overnight millionaire selling NFTs. Let's have a look at each of my favorite brushes. First is Pepperoni Spray. This brush blasts out round, flat blobs that look like they belong on a pizza, not a canvas. By using lighter pressure, you can blend with this brush to make a pork ragu sauce. Next is Not So Hard. This brush has pressure inverted, so if you press too hard, you won't get anything at all. The purpose of this brush is to punish you for trying too hard. Just draw as carelessly as possible, and you'll have better luck with this brush. Medium pressure sometimes gives you blending, but only when it feels like it. Next up is Tapeworm. This one is dedicated to the unofficial mascot of the Unimpressivists. The lowly tapeworm feeds on the digestive tract of its host, and it is despised by all in the animal kingdom. It stinks, and you will too if you make art with this brush. After that, we have Out of Ink. This brush simulates one of the staples of the Unimpressivist toolkit, a pen that is almost out of ink. Your patience will run out just as quickly. Watercolors are renowned for making delicate colors that build up slowly, and ink is known for its rich, dark pigments that cover in high concentrations. Now those two mediums can battle to the death in a brush I like to call ink versus watercolor. Just try to paint something beautiful with this brush. I dare you. Make It Worse is another favorite of the Unimpressivist. This brush deposits a lot of unwanted crap on your canvas. You might try heavy pressure, but that only adds more paint while randomly removing some of it. And lighter pressure makes it even worse. The gunk gets rubbed into the canvas, staining it. There's no going back. Stick figure pencil works wonders for creating stick figures and even stick animals. Its basic-ass square dab and lack of smoothing or any other properties make it easy to create dull lines without any expressiveness or variation in width. For the best results, use this brush with a mouse. 3 hairs and some air is a blender brush that only has a few bristles on it, because it's hard to afford bristles when you are a starving unimpressivist. Be patient, it may take several dozen strokes to actually blend anything with this. If you set this brush to the paint mode, it can also work well for adding hair to stick figures. Oily Eraser is a brush for those times when you aren't sure if you want to erase something or smudge it. Now you don't have to choose, and you can do both. Just look at how I can't completely erase anything while also smudging it around. In traditional painting, glazing is a technique artists use to slowly build up layers of color. In the Unimpressivist variation of this technique, you can use the dull Glazer to slowly remove layers of color to create gray. Desaturation can be critical if your colors are too appealing or too harmonious. Not enough saturation is up next. This watercolor brush deposits very wet paint that flows and drips easily. But once you begin to layer strokes, you'll see that the color quickly becomes oversaturated. Oversaturating your colors is an effective way to put that sub-amateurish flair on your paintings. Plus, it almost guarantees that your colors will be out of gamut and will not reproduce well in print or on the web. What's more, if you select a color that might actually look nice in the painting, this brush will override your bad judgment and instead build up to a yellow to ensure that your strokes are always piss poor. It gets even better when you try to paint different colors over one another. It's pandemonium on my canvas. I have no idea what I'm going to get when I mix colors. It all just looks like garbage with very little effort on my part. And last but not least, we have 1990s watercolor. This brush takes us back to the golden age of digital art with watercolor that doesn't support pressure expressions or diffusion. All you get are identical looking strokes with a transparent buildup that gets worse with every new stroke. Like the Macarena, this watercolor was all the rage in 1993, but now it isn't impressing anyone. So now that you've seen how unimpressive this brush pack can be, you're probably asking yourself, where might I be able to purchase a set of brushes like this? First, let me tell you the best thing about these brushes. You can't make good art with them. You just can't. Don't try and prove me wrong. It's not worth the suffering. That means only unimpressivists are going to be able to use these brushes. Take that, mainstream art! Because I believe in the unimpressivist movement, I'll let you purchase these brushes at whatever price you feel is reasonable. But this isn't a deal that's available to non-believers or people who just want to jump on the hype train to get rich quick. Unimpressivism isn't about money or success. It isn't about anything. And I don't mean that in an artsy way to make it sound impressive. I mean it's literally about nothing. I would never try to impress you with my art. As a safeguard against these brushes becoming too impressive, I'll only make them available to the first 1,000 artists. If you are a true believer in the unimpressivist method, don't let this opportunity slip away. I'll put a link to download these brushes in the description of this video. This is no joke. These brushes really are for sale. Why are you still here? You should be downloading this brush pack right now. Go! Go!